Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. 8th lesson, Surah Al-Baqarah, verses 9 through 16. Lesson from the Quran by the thinker of the Quran, Allama Ghulam Ahmad Parwez. Dear brothers, today is the 21st of July, 1968. It is regrettable that last Sunday the lesson could not be held due to rain. Those friends who came despite the rain had to return deprived, and we apologize to them. Even this morning the weather was very uncertain, so many changes had to be made in the arrangements. At this time too, I hear that it is raining in the city, so friends have not been able to arrive in full numbers, and we also waited a little for them. Review of the previous lesson. In the previous lesson, verse 8 of Surah Al-Baqarah was under discussion. Two groups had already appeared before us. One, with open hearts and full harmony of tongue, with complete unity of faith and action, believe in the truth of God's laws and mold their lives accordingly. They have done so, they are doing so, and they will continue to do so. The second group consists of those who openly oppose these laws, reject them, and do not accept them. After that, a third group appeared. وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. And among mankind are those who say, we believe in Allah and the last day, but they are not believers. This group has two categories before us. One is those who acknowledge these things but do not act accordingly. About them the Quran also said, وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. They are not believers. Because to be a believer, it is absolutely necessary to be a Muslim. After acknowledging the truth of these laws, to bow before them, to make decisions according to them, and to act upon those decisions. This too is necessary for being a believer. Thus, one category is of those who say they are believers, but do not act accordingly. They too are not believers.
The standard of not being a believer as set by the Quran. I had said that one aspect is political, to become a nation. In that sense, it is correct that we Muslims are one nation with a common value, and on that basis we become members of one nation. But according to the Quran, the standard of being a believer can only be fulfilled when, after acknowledging the truth of God's laws, decisions in individual and collective matters are made according to them. Because وَمَنْ لَمْ يَحْكُمْ بِمَا أَنزَلَ اللَّهُ فَأُولَٰئِكَ هُمُ الْكَافِرُونَ. And whoever does not judge by what Allah has revealed, they are the disbelievers. Therefore, even if someone is called a believer, if decisions are not made according to the Book of God, then they are not believers. According to the explicit text of the Quran, they too fall into the category of disbelievers. The psychological condition of the hypocrite. The second category is of those whom we call munafiq. This means that even their verbal declaration is a deception, a fraud. In the first category, you will see that their verbal declaration is not a fraud. They do not intend to deceive. But these others, from the very beginning, due to their selfish motives, make even their verbal declaration a deception, a fraud. Later, they will be referred to by the word munafiq. I have already explained the literal meaning of these words earlier when discussing infaq. Regarding the meaning of munafiq, I had said, you know that when wild rats build their burrows, they make one entrance to go inside, but they also make another exit on the other side. Such a burrow is called nafaq. From this comes the word munafiq. One who enters a community while already planning an exit route, not to remain inside, but to leave when convenient. One who keeps both paths open is even linguistically called a munafiq. These are the people whose verbal declaration, acknowledgement and claim of faith is itself based on deception. They are called hypocrites. This is the second category of those described in وَمِنَ النَّاسِ مَنْ يَقُولُ آمَنَّا بِاللَّهِ وَبِالْيَوْمِ الْآخِرِ وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. And among mankind are those who say, we believe in Allah and the last day, but they are not believers. And about them it was said, يُخَادِعُونَ اللَّهَ وَالَّذِينَ آمَنُوا وَمَا يُخَادِعُونَ إِلَّا أَنفُسَهُمْ وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ. They seek to deceive Allah and those who believe, but they deceive none but themselves, though they do not perceive. They imagine that through their declaration and acknowledgement they can deceive the divine system and the community of believers. But the Quran says, in reality, they only deceive themselves, not anyone else.
This deception is, in fact, first and foremost self-deception. About this, the next word is وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ 2:9, but they do not perceive. I had explained that among the Arabs, shu'ur meant knowledge acquired through the senses. They called it sense perception. In our usage today, we use the word shu'ur for thought, awareness, and consciousness. But among the Arabs, remember, for abstract realities or non-sensory concepts, this word was not used. For knowledge gained through sensory experience, they used shu'ur. So when the Quran says, وَمَا يَشْعُرُونَ 2:9, there is a profound truth here. They think that only those things which appear in concrete sensory form provide knowledge. They also think that people will know about them in such sensory terms. But the next verse clarifies the meaning further. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ 2:10. In their hearts is a disease. Now, how can a disease of the heart be seen with the eyes of sense perception? Psychological illnesses cannot be measured or observed with sensory instruments. That is why the Quran says, their hearts are diseased. They want that such matters be known through sensory perception, or they think that people cannot know about them otherwise. The difference between qalb and fu'ad and their Quranic meaning. فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ 2:10. In their hearts is a disease. The plural, qulub, comes from the singular, qalb. Generally, qalb is translated as heart. But in Arabic, there are two words used for this, and the Quran itself employs both, qalb and fu'ad. This reflects the richness and subtlety of the language, as there is a distinction between the two. Although both words are sometimes used interchangeably, fu'ad comes from fed, which means to roast or to burn. Thus, fu'ad carries the sense of burning passion, inner agitation, or emotional intensity. It refers to the part of human inner feeling connected with emotions and fervor. Qalb, on the other hand, is associated with thought, reflection, understanding, and consciousness. The Quran says, لَهُمْ قُلُوبٌ لَا يَفْقَهُونَ بِهَا 7:179. They have hearts with which they do not understand. So qalb is linked to comprehension and deep reflection. The modern usage of mind. In English, the word mind corresponds to qalb. Sometimes heart is used, but the established term is mind. And mind is considered a comprehensive concept, encompassing both intellect and emotions. It is regarded as the center and source of both. Yet even today, if you ask what the mind actually is, people cannot explain it. Even strict materialists, who believe in nothing beyond matter, still believe in the existence of the mind. But the mind is not a physical organ of the body. It is a broad, comprehensive concept, and its true nature cannot yet be defined. Related concepts. In their terminology, they also use words like psyche, personality, and individuality. Mind is a comprehensive term. These are realities that do not belong to the physical body. They are not parts of the physical organism. This subject will come up later when we discuss the human nafs, the self, and personality. For now, the point is simply this. When the Quran says, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ 2:10, in their hearts is a disease, it is not referring to the physical lump of flesh in the chest. Fatwas on heart surgery. Now entry into paradise will become more difficult. I mention this because recently we have seen cases where hearts have been transplanted, a weak, diseased heart removed from one chest and a healthy heart surgically placed in its place. You know of these events. In science, research is being done to replace weak, worn-out parts of the human body with strong, healthy new ones. This is a great benefit for humanity. But in our society, every matter immediately becomes a subject of fatwa. Here, debates began that this is a great act of disbelief, of atheism. The reasoning was, if a Muslim's chest contains the heart of a non-Muslim, then on the day of judgment there will be difficulty. The Muslim must go to paradise, the disbeliever's heart must go to hell, so what will happen then? These are the kinds of debates that arise, and such misfortunes befall nations. Dear brothers, now the debate is whether this is halal or haram. Some even went further, not only transplanting a human heart into another human, but transplanting a pig's heart into a human. And so the matter reached the level of fatwas.
The meaning of disease in the heart. I was saying that when the Quran says, "Fi qulubihim maradun," that is, in their hearts is a disease, it does not mean the lump of flesh whose function is the circulation of blood. Psychologically, the imbalance of the human self is what is meant by the heart being diseased, by it being withered. Qalb is that entity which you may call the mind. This is a psychological illness. The Quran says, "Fi qulubihim maradun." Among the Arabs, marad meant loss of equilibrium. See how this nation, though nurtured in ignorance, had words that reached such depth. Health itself means equilibrium. Disease means imbalance. Just as the body becomes diseased when its functions lose balance, so too the human qalb, meaning the self, becomes diseased when the balance of personality is lost. This is what is meant by "fi qulubihim maradun." It is the loss of psychological balance. Their condition is that their balance is disturbed. They have become unbalanced. That is why elsewhere the Quran says, وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ. It is a healing for what is in the breasts. This is healing for the disease within the chest. Understand clearly, this does not refer to chest diseases like pneumonia. Here, the disease of the qalb is mentioned, and the Quran says it is healed. These are the psychological illnesses of the heart, and the Quran is healing for them. The increase of disease. Then it says, فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. Allah increased them in disease. Again, the subject here is Allah. This is the same as خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ. Allah sealed their hearts. You will recall these points since you are following these lessons consistently. I explained earlier that when the Quran says, Allah did this, what does it mean? I devoted an entire lesson to this. Here, the matter is clarified in the very next words. If you read it this way, no doubts arise that Allah is increasing their disease, so what can they do? The verse says, فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. Allah increased them in disease, and for them is a painful punishment. This is the same difficulty you encountered with خَتَمَ اللَّهُ عَلَى قُلُوبِهِمْ, where it also says, وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ. The question arises, if Allah sealed their hearts, then why punish them? I explained that another verse clarifies, بِكُفْرِهِمْ, because of their disbelief. It is due to their rejection that God's law caused their capacity for understanding and reflection to end. Here too it says, فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا وَلَهُمْ عَذَابٌ أَلِيمٌ بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. In their hearts is a disease, so Allah increased them in disease, and for them is a painful punishment, because they used to lie. This is the reason. Because they denied and rejected the truths and realities, disease grew in their hearts.
Continuous wrongdoing gradually removes the sense of loss in a human being. The nature of lying is such that as a person continues in this practice, its momentum increases. If a person tells one lie, then to cover it, he must tell 10 more lies. At first, when a person does this, there is some inner unease, some sense of guilt. But if he repeats such actions a few times, then you will see that even that unease disappears, and lying becomes his normal way of life. This is what the Quran describes. فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ. Allah increased them in disease because they used to lie. Because of their denial, this psychological disease develops, and as they continue in their way, the disease grows worse. The remedy. The first step is to stop this practice. After stopping, the damage already done must be repaired. Just as when you go to a doctor, he investigates the illness, determines its cause, and the first thing he tells you is, you must stop this. After stopping, the next step is to ensure it does not happen again. So the Quran explains, this disease arises because بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ, because they used to lie. And as they continue in this way, the disease increases further and further. The implications of the non-Quranic concept of intercession instead of confirming verbal declaration through action. There are two categories here. In the first part, the Quran says, وَمَا هُمْ بِمُؤْمِنِينَ. They are not believers. This refers to those who make a verbal declaration, formally, superficially, as if by birth they are already Muslims. After that, they consider it not necessary to confirm their declaration through deeds and actions. They are satisfied that since they are Muslims nationally, that is enough. Later, when some unease arises, they invent another belief. No matter, we are the beloved community of God's messenger. When we go there, the messenger of Allah sallallahu alaihi wasallam will intercede for us. As a result, they never feel the need to confirm their declaration through their actions. The second category is those whose declaration itself is fraudulent. For them, the question of confirming it through deeds does not even arise. Whichever category it may be, if they continue along this path, the condition worsens. When our first generations did not consider action necessary, if someone had stopped them then and said, without action you cannot be believers, this disease would not have spread. But for 1,000 years, generation after generation, this has continued. Muslims born in Muslim homes, dying in the same way, and at death, if the kalima is recited, that is considered the greatest blessing. The greatest prayer is that one may recite the kalima at death. The greatest curse is that one may not. Thus, the only requirement was thought to be born in a Muslim home, without choice, and at death reciting the kalima. The entire period in between was assumed to be automatically in accordance with Islam. When this continues generation after generation, it becomes entrenched. Now, as born Muslims, we never even imagine that we might not be true Muslims. If such a thought arises, it shocks us, and we feel like striking the one who says it. This is how the Quran describes, فَزَادَهُمُ اللَّهُ مَرَضًا. Allah increased them in disease. The disease grows until it reaches the fourth stage, like tuberculosis. This is how nations are destroyed. The nature of the word yakdhibun. The Quran says, بِمَا كَانُوا يَكْذِبُونَ 2:10, because they used to lie. This word yakdhibun is profound. Its translation is to lie, but the Quran explains it in a unique way. In our understanding, lying means an event occurs and we report it incorrectly. That is a lie. The Quran agrees this is lying, but then shows another, more severe form of lying. Listen carefully, dear brothers, to the Quran's definition of lying. إِذَا جَاءَكَ الْمُنَافِقُونَ 63:1. When the hypocrites come to you, O Messenger. قَالُوا نَشْهَدُ إِنَّكَ لَرَسُولُ اللَّهِ. They say, we bear witness that you are the messenger of Allah. This is a true statement. وَاللَّهُ يَعْلَمُ إِنَّكَ لَرَسُولُهُ. And God knows that you are indeed His messenger. So they spoke the truth. God Himself confirms it. But then the Quran says, وَاللَّهُ يَشْهَدُ إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ لَكَاذِبُونَ. And God testifies that the hypocrites are liars. See the depth here? Although their words were factually true, The Quran calls them liars because their declaration was not backed by sincerity or action. Their verbal truth was in reality falsehood. The Quran's definition of falsehood. Reflect carefully on what the Quran says. The hypocrite speaks words that are factually true. You, peace be upon him, are the messenger of Allah. God himself affirms, indeed, you are his messenger. Yet the Quran declares them liars. The definition of falsehood, kidhb, is this: when the heart and the tongue are not in harmony, when the tongue does not confirm what the heart believes, when the heart does not support what the tongue says, that is falsehood. Even if the words are factually true, if they do not reflect the inner conviction, they are lies. So when we recite the articles of faith, when we read verses of the Quran, are we truly expressing the voice of our hearts? Are our hearts and tongues in harmony? If not, then that is falsehood. إِنَّ الْمُنَافِقِينَ لَكَاذِبُونَ. Indeed, the hypocrites are liars. Now, consider another form of falsehood, even more refined and severe. The Quran says, أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ. Have you seen the one who denies the religion? This is not about disbelievers who openly reject faith. It refers to those who verbally acknowledge Islam, who register themselves as Muslims, who say Alhamdulillah and thank God, yet in practice they deny the religion. How? The Quran explains, فَذَلِكَ الَّذِي يَدُعُّ الْيَتِيمِ. That is the one who repulses the orphan. وَلَا يَحُضُّ عَلَى طَعَامِ الْمِسْكِينِ. And does not encourage the feeding of the poor. These are people who push away those left alone in society, who neglect those whose livelihoods have collapsed, who neither provide food themselves nor encourage others to do so. This is denial of the religion, not by words, but by deeds. The inadequacy of mere ritual prayer. Look further. The Quran says, ثَوَيْلٌ لِلْمُصَلِّينَ. Woe to those who pray. This is not about those who abandon prayer altogether. In traditional law, they were already condemned. This refers to those standing in the mosque, performing prayer outwardly. الَّذِينَ هُمْ عَنْ صَلَاتِهِمْ سَاهُونَ. Those who are heedless of their prayer. They are heedless of the purpose, the goal, the essence of prayer. الَّذِينَ هُمْ يُرَاءُونَ. Those who show off. They perform the visible rituals meticulously, raising hands to the proper height, folding them correctly, bowing at the right angle, ensuring 5 points touch the ground in prostration, pronouncing words with precise articulation. Outwardly, everything is perfect. But the Quran says, وَيَمْنَعُونَ الْمَعُونَ. And they withhold small acts of kindness. They block the channels of sustenance that should flow like water. They prevent resources from reaching those in need. Thus, the Quran begins, Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim, in the name of Allah, the most gracious, the most merciful. أَرَأَيْتَ الَّذِي يُكَذِّبُ بِالدِّينِ. Have you seen the one who denies the religion? This denial is not verbal rejection, but practical denial through injustice, neglect, and hypocrisy. I have given only 2 examples at this time. One example is of the hypocrites. The Quran says that they speak words which are factually correct, but the Quran declares them kadhab, liars, because their hearts do not testify to what their tongues are saying. This is one form of falsehood. The second form of falsehood is of those who claim religion, who perform prayers, who observe all its outward rituals and requirements, yet they do not establish the economic system of society on proper foundations. They block the channels of sustenance, restricting them for themselves alone. These are the ones who deny the religion. So both categories are present. 1, those whose hearts and tongues are not in harmony. 2, those who verbally declare but do not confirm it through their deeds. This is what the Quran calls kidhb, falsehood. Either the heart and tongue are not aligned, or the declaration is not confirmed by action. This falsehood creates a disease in the hearts, penetrating so deeply that even after everything, people think that if they give away 2.5% zakat, then the rest becomes as pure and lawful as mother's milk. This disease becomes embedded in the depths of the heart, impossible to remove. The cure is وَشِفَاءٌ لِمَا فِي الصُّدُورِ, and it is healing for what is in the breasts. This Quran is the only remedy. There is no other prescription that can cure this disease.
The detailed mention of the term fasad and its fundamental meaning. Dear brothers, let us move forward. Up to this point, the discussion was theoretical. These are the people whose hearts are diseased, whose falsehood increases that disease, and because of it, they face a tragic destruction. What do? وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ لَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ قَالُوا إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. When it is said to them, do not cause corruption in the land, they say, we are only reformers. They are told, do not create corruption in the country, in the nation, in society. They reply, what? Are we corruptors? How can you say that? We are reformers. Muslihun. What is muslihun? In Arabic, from the root swad lam ha, come words like sulh, peace, islah, reform, and muslih, reformer. It means to keep something in the condition in which it ought to remain. That condition is defined by God's law, by the system of nature. This is what you call harmony. The opposite is when something is not in the condition in which, according to God's law, it ought to remain. When it deviates, that is called fasad, corruption. In other words, creating disharmony in society is fasad. So, when they are told, do not create disharmony in society, they say, we do not create disharmony. We are reformers. Examples of fasad from the Quran. وَإِلَى مَدْيَنَ أَخَاهُمْ شُعَيْبًا. This year, to the people of Madian, we sent their brother Shuaib. قَالَ يَا قَوْمِ اعْبُدُوا اللَّهَ مَا لَكُمْ مِنْ إِلَٰهٍ غَيْرُهُ. He said, O my people, obey Allah. You have no deity other than Him. قَدْ جَاءَتْكُمْ بَيِّنَةٌ مِّن رَبِّكُمْ. Clear evidence has come to you from your Lord. What were these clear evidences? The Quran explains, فَأَوْفُوا الْقَيْلَ وَالْمِيزَانِ. Give full measure and weight. وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. Do not diminish people's rightful things. The Quran thus emphasized 3 points. Keep measures and weights correct. Give workers their full due. Do not reduce or withhold what rightfully belongs to others. Wages or compulsion. Remember, let me clarify about compensation. We who take the labor of others, what do? A laborer should get 3 rupees a day. Who decided this? 3 rupees a day. You may say, well, the laborer himself agrees to 3 rupees a day, so there is no injustice. But what are you saying? In Punjabi they say, Bhai kinna vagarya, raat diyan pukhiyan ne, raat da pukha bhai vagarda hai. How much did you exploit the laborer? His children were hungry since last night. A hungry father will accept any wage. To say that this is mutual consent is wrong. Remember, the greatest mischief in the economic system is the fixing of wages. Who fixes them? Those who take the labor fix them. Think about it. If in a marketplace the seller alone fixes the price and the buyer must pay it, would that be justice? Certainly not. Here, the employer who takes the labor sits and decides how much to pay. This is called the compensation for labor. And when he pays that amount, he says, I have paid what was agreed. According to the law, the poor worker cannot say anything because this was agreed. This is wrong. The true compensation is whatever results from his labor, that is his due. Who are you to decide otherwise? The Quran's economic system and Shu'aib's message to his people. The Quran says, وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. Do not diminish people's rightful things. This was said in the story of Prophet Shu'aib and the people of Madian. but the realities apply to today's economy. The whole world is in turmoil because فَأَوْفُوا الْكَيْلَ وَالْمِيزَانَ وَلَا تَبْخَسُوا النَّاسَ أَشْيَاءَهُمْ. Give full measure and do not diminish people's rightful things. This is not being practiced. The entire struggle today is between capital and labor. Shu'aib raised this voice. I was speaking about fasad fil ard, corruption in the land. Listen further, dear brothers. وَلَا تُفْسِدُوا فِي الْأَرْضِ بَعْدَ إِصْلَاحِهَا. Do not cause corruption in the land after it has been set right. Here, both words, fasad, corruption, and islah, reform, appear together. Cheating in weights and measures, not giving labor its rightful compensation, this is fasad. When these things are set right, that is islah. The Quran itself declares this. So, when they are told, لا تفسدوا في الأرض, do not cause corruption in the land, I say, al-ard in Quranic usage refers to the economic system. That is why the Quran says about God, He is ilahul ardi wa ilahus sama', the God of the earth and the God of the heavens. Not only is He the God of the heavens, but also of the earth. His law must govern earthly life just as it governs celestial life. Thus, fasad fil ard means not allowing the economic system to remain in the condition God's law requires. That is corruption. Islah is to structure it according to those divine principles. Repetition of Shu'aib's message. Elsewhere, the same story of Shu'aib is repeated. أوفوا الكيل ولا تكونوا من المخسرين. Give full measure and do not be of those who cause loss. وزنوا بالقسطاس المستقيم. Weigh with the straight balance. ولا تبخسوا الناس أشياءهم. Do not diminish people's rightful things. This repeats the principle of correct weights and measures. Al-Mukhsirin are those who cheat. The Quran says, do not do this. Structure your economic system on the lines of God's law. بالقسطاس المستقيم, with the straight balance. And again, ولا تعثوا في الأرض مفسدين. Do not cause corruption in the land as corrupters. Remember, in the nation, in the economic system, do not create corruption. Create forms of reform. The psychological effects of hoarding wealth and Quranic guidance. The Quran presents Qarun as the representative of the capitalist system. It says, إِنَّ قَارُونَ كَانَ مِنْ قَوْمِ مُوسَى. Indeed, Qarun was from the people of Moses. He was told, وَابْتَغِ فِي مَا آتَاكَ اللَّهُ الدَّارَ الْآخِرَةَ وَلَا تَنْسَ نَصِيبَكَ مِنَ الدُّنْيَا وَأَحْسِنْ كَمَا أَحْسَنَ اللَّهُ إِلَيْكَ. Seek through what Allah has given you the hereafter, and do not forget your share of the world, and do good as Allah has done good to you. Qarun had hoarded so much wealth for himself that his greed became so deep he wouldn't spend it on anyone else, nor even on himself. The Quran reminds him, take your rightful share in this world and use your wealth to create beauty and goodness in society. Then it warns, وَلَا تَبْغِ الْفَسَادَ فِي الْأَرْضِ إِنَّ اللَّهَ لَا يُحِبُّ الْمُفْسِدِينَ. Do not seek corruption in the land. Indeed, Allah does not love corrupters. Think about it. What corruption was Qarun creating? In our society, fasad is understood only as fighting or bloodshed. If someone is struck and a little blood flows, we call it corruption, and the machinery of law is set in motion. But the silent sucking of blood through exploitation, hoarding, and economic injustice is not even considered corruption. Qarun did not commit outward violence. His corruption was hoarding so much wealth that it required a group of strong men just to carry his treasures.
Qarun considered his wealth accumulation to be his own skill. Listen. What was the corruption? A strange thing, dear brothers. The Quran says, the corruption was Qarun's mentality, and that mentality was this. When he was told, with all that you are gathering for yourself, spend some upon yourself, and then let some of it beautify society, his reply was, قال إنما أوتيته على علم عندي. He said, "I have only been given it because of knowledge I possess." Meaning, what are you saying? All that I have earned is the result of my own skill. What right does anyone else have to demand from me? Why should I give? The Quran declares, this is corruption. This mentality that they keep devising schemes and plans to gather everything for themselves, and when asked to share they say, "This is the result of our wisdom and planning. What we are accumulating is due to our own skill. No one else has any share in it." The mentality of capitalistic economy. Look at the capitalistic economy. The one sitting at the top appears to do nothing. Just a desk, a few papers, 2 or 3 telephones, and yet everything happens there. He says, "Ala ilmin indi." It is my craftsmanship, my skill, my tact, my strategies, my schemes. The moves I have placed upon the chessboard of politics are the reason for all this. No one else can have a share in it. The Quran says this is the greatest corruption created in the world. Quran's definition of corruption and reform. Do you see what corruption is? For corruption, the Quran has used a comprehensive term, defining what corruption, fasad, is, and what reform is, islah, is. This is not our definition, but the Quran's definition. According to God, in this entire universe, where no creature has been given choice or will, everything runs under God's laws, with perfect order and discipline. Why does it run so harmoniously? Because only one law governs it. If every entity began to create its own law, or if multiple authorities operated simultaneously, what would be the result? Disorder and chaos. Definition of corruption and reform. Do you see what corruption is? The Quran has used fasad, corruption, and islah, reform, as comprehensive terms. This is not our definition, but the Quran's. According to God, corruption is when human beings create disorder by following their own laws instead of His. Look at the universe. Everything without free will follows God's laws, and it runs with perfect harmony and order. Why? Because only one law governs it. If each element created its own law, or if multiple authorities imposed conflicting laws simultaneously, what would be the result? Chaos. Thus, corruption is deviation from God's law. Reform is alignment with it. Believers have divided God into 2 parts, the God of the mosque and the God of business. Dear brothers, it is said that these people claim to believe in God. They say, "We truly believe," but they have placed Him in the heavens. Bismillahir Rahmanir Rahim. In their earthly life, however, they appoint another God, and by its authority they move forward. Do you see what these 2 gods are? They consider one God to be the God of the heavens, and for their earthly life they appoint another God, upon whose support they live and expand. The Quran says, لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ لَفَسَدَتَا. If there were in them, the heavens and the earth, other gods besides Allah, they would have been ruined. Remember, this external universe runs with beauty, harmony, and order because only one God's law governs it. If more than one law operated, corruption, fasad, would result. Think about it. What would happen if multiple authorities governed? In the universe, corruption would be visible in tangible form, and in your own life, you are creating the same corruption. One system does not govern all. 2 different principles, one for worship, another for social life. In some parts of life, prayer, fasting, pilgrimage, zakat, God's commands are followed. But in your economic, political, and social life, you follow your own system. In worship, if there is even a small difference, for example, where to fold the hands, the decision is not made by majority vote. It is decided by what the Sharia says. Even if 100,000 worshippers in a mosque agree otherwise, the ruling of the Sharia prevails. But once outside the mosque, in your social and political life, the system you consider best is majority rule. When an issue arises, you ask the elders, "What do you say?" They ask, "What does 51% say?" And whatever the majority decides becomes law. 2 gods, one for worship, one for law. Why have you created 2 principles? For prayer, you follow one authority. For national law, you follow another. This means you have established 2 gods. The meaning of ilah is the one who gives the final decision, the one who makes the law, the one whose command is obeyed. Tell me, have you not created two gods? One God for prayer, another for the law of the land? The Quran says, لَوْ كَانَ فِيهِمَا آلِهَةٌ إِلَّا اللَّهُ لَفَسَدَتَا. If there were in them, the heavens and the earth, other gods besides Allah, they would have been ruined. Illustration of corruption, or fasad. Look at the universe. If two principles were established there, what would happen? Suppose 5 or 6 households decide unanimously one morning, today we will not allow heat to be produced. Then tea would not boil anywhere. That is, la fasadata, corruption, or imagine two gods. One commands to produce heat, the other commands to produce cold. What would happen? Chaos. This is what the Quran means by fasadata. Corruption results when more than one authority governs. Humanity has divided its thinking into two parts. Dear brothers, the foundation of corruption, or fasad, is when life is divided into compartments, when duality arises. One domain governed by one ilah or authority, and another domain by another ilah. This is what the Quran calls la fasadata. They would have been ruined. Thus, one God for the heavens and another for the earth. See how the Quran itself points out this division to draw our attention to something so important. We all believe in Ilahus Sama', the God of the heavens. That is why nothing goes wrong with him, people say. Yes, he is seated on the throne, his command runs there, and the angels obey him. For us, his role is limited to prayer, fasting, pilgrimage, and zakat. Whatever the details, we still accept that in these rituals, God's command is decisive. But once we step outside, in shops, offices, farms, factories, another system operates. In our individual life, another system, and at the governmental level, the best system is considered to be majority rule, 51% votes.
Two gods in practice. Dear brothers, these are two gods being acknowledged in practice. The Quran warns, if there are more than one ilah, then la fasadata, corruption would result. When told not to create corruption, they reply, we are not corruptors, we are reformers. Look at our industrialists, the owners of large factories and mills. Whenever you speak with them, they say, we are striving for the country's progress. Without our textile mills, you would be dependent on others even for a piece of cloth. They ask, do you call this corruption? Is this not reform? But the Quran says, نَحْنُ مُصْلِحُونَ. They say, we are reformers. See how the forms of reformers change over time. The Quran's declaration. The Quran responds with powerful emphasis. أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ. Behold, they are the corruptors. Indeed, they alone, none else. This is the force of Quranic expression. It declares they are lying when they claim to be reformers. In reality, they are the corruptors. And then, وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. But they do not perceive. They say, tell us, where did we shed the blood of workers? We never struck them with a stick. We are owners. We enter the factory peacefully, pay wages as agreed. Where is the corruption? They want corruption to be recognized only in visible physical form. They do not perceive that exploitation itself is corruption. As the poet said, "Kise bataye koi hune arzu kya hai?" Who can explain what the blood of aspirations is? They insist we will only believe when we see color and fragrance. God's response to the demands of the corruptors. Those who say, show us the visible signs, the color and fragrance of the blood of aspirations, then we will admit that blood has been shed. Who can explain what hune arzu really is? This is what the Quran means by وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ, but they do not perceive. They want corruption to be shown in visible, sensory form. They ask, show us where we struck with a stick. But the Quran says, this corruption cannot be displayed in color and fragrance. The Quran goes deeper. This is not something seen with the eyes of the forehead. It is seen with the eyes of the heart.
Yet they demand, "Show us with these eyes what corruption we have caused." Their response to the call of faith. The Quran continues, وَإِذَا قِيلَ لَهُمْ آمِنُوا كَمَا آمَنَ النَّاسُ قَالُوا أَنُؤْمِنُ كَمَا آمَنَ السُّفَهَاءُ. When it is said to them, "Believe as the people have believed," they say, "Shall we believe as the fools have believed?" When they are told, "Believe as the community of believers has believed in the truth of this system and confirm your faith through your deeds," their reply is astonishing. In today's society, if someone is told, "Work honestly, trade with integrity, do not cheat in weights, do not mix impurities," the immediate response is, "Let's see what happens to him in a few days. He doesn't even know his own profit and loss." These so-called honest workers will soon realize the consequences. If in an office or factory a worker labors sincerely and honestly, others call him a fool. When told, "Follow the path of the believers," they reply, "This is a group of fools who do not even know their own benefit. Do you want us to be ruined like them?" The meaning of sufaha. The Quran uses the word as-sufaha. Safaha means failing to use reason and intellect. They say, "This group works hard, gives away what is beyond their needs to fulfill the needs of others, does not seek to accumulate wealth, does not build properties, does not maintain bank balances. Sometimes they even sacrifice their own needs to meet the needs of others. This is a group of fools, and you ask us to do the same?" This is what they mean by sufaha, those who, in their view, do not use reason. Social perception of fools. You know well who is considered a fool in our society. The Quran explains it, but even before that, our daily sayings reflect it. As the Punjabi proverb goes, "Jedi koti ichdane ode kamle visiane." In the house where there is abundance of grain, even the fool is considered wise. And the greatest intellect, if hungry at might, is seen by others as the greatest fool. The Pharaoh-like method of wounding the personality of the poor in the gatherings of the wealthy. In gatherings where wealthy, affluent, and powerful people are seated, if there are also some whose appearance, clothing, and condition clearly show that they are not mill owners or rich men, then observe what happens. If such a person dares to speak in the middle of the discussion, immediately a shower of rebukes comes. "Be quiet. What do you know about these matters? Do not interfere." It is as if all intellect, wisdom, and understanding are considered to be the dower that comes only with wealth. Their principle is, intelligence in the world is divided into two parts. One part goes entirely to the rich, the factory owners, and the other part is left for the rest of humanity. From the light of prophethood to the sparks of arrogance, a story from the time of Noah alayhi salam. This is not a new phenomenon, dear brothers. It is very ancient. The Quran describes the time of Prophet Noah alayhi salam when he invited his people. فَقَالَ الْمَلَأُ الَّذِينَ كَفَرُوا مِنْ قَوْمِهِ. And the chiefs of his people who disbelieved said, the Quran uses the word al-mala'u. In Arabic, mala'u means those whose vessels are full, those whose containers are filled with provision. Later, the word came to mean chiefs or leaders because in that era, leadership was measured by how full one's vessels of wealth were. And even today, the same standard persists. When Noah invited them, those whose vessels were full of provision said, "Ma naraka illa basharam mithlana." We see you as nothing but a man like ourselves. They dismissed him as merely human. And in other cases, they would say to prophets like Hud alayhi salam, If it were not for the respect of your family, we would see how you dared to speak such things. The status of workers in the eyes of the wealthy. They said to Noah, وَمَا نَرَاكَ اتَّبَعَكَ إِلَّا الَّذِينَ هُمْ أَرَاذِلُنَا بَادِيَ الرَّأْيِ. We see none following you except the lowest among us at first thought. They mocked the community of believers who had joined Noah. These were ordinary workers, shopkeepers, cobblers, weavers, laborers. They called them Araziluna, our lowly ones, the kammi of society. In villages, those who perform manual labor are called kammi. The word itself comes from kam, to work, to serve, and became a label of inferiority. So they said, those who follow you are our kammi, the lowest of society. Looking at them, it is obvious they have no intellect or thought. There is no need to investigate whether they have any reasoning capacity. Clearly, they are not people of wisdom. The mentality of the wealthy. Do you see? In their view, wisdom and intellect are confined to wealth. When told, believe as these people have believed, they replied, shall we believe like these people whose appearance shows they have no intellect? Thus, the Quran exposes the arrogance of the wealthy. They equate intelligence with riches and dismiss the poor and hardworking as devoid of thought. The one most removed from the straight path is he who deceives himself. The Quran, dear brothers, uses the same word in another place. There the word safahu is used. How remarkable is this Quran! Earlier it was about those who judged others, but here it says, وَمَن يَرْغَبُ عَن مِلَّةِ إِبْرَاهِيمَ, and who would turn away from the religion of Abraham. This is the description of the Abrahamic way, the straight path, pure and free of any adulteration. Who turns away from this path? The Quran says, إِلَّا مَنْ سَفِهَ نَفْسَهُ, except the one who makes a fool of himself. It is not about failing to use reason regarding others. The real loss is when a person does not use intellect and reflection about his own self. Whoever does not think rationally about his own being, his own value, his own destiny, that is the one who deviates from the straight path. If they truly understood what the human self is, what gives it value, what beautifies it, what corrupts it, and how great is the irreparable loss when it is ruined, they would never leave the straight path. But those who deceive themselves, who do not use intellect for their own selves, are the ones who turn away. This is safiha nafsahu, self-deception.
Deceiving others is ultimately self-deception. When told, believe as these people have believed, they reply, shall we believe like those who do not use intellect? But the Quran declares, أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ السُّفَهَاءُ, behold, they are the fools. The sufaha are those who do not use intellect. In reality, they themselves are the fools, for they have deceived their own selves. You see how the verse فِي قُلُوبِهِمْ مَرَضٌ, in their hearts is a disease, is explained. The one who thinks he is deceiving another is in fact deceiving himself. The Quran repeatedly says, the loss is not to the other, but to the deceiver himself. Whatever he gains by deceiving others is only a small possession, a temporary gain. But the loss he inflicts upon his own self is so immense that it cannot be compensated. That is why the Quran interprets every deception of others as self-deception. It says, أَلَا إِنَّهُمْ هُمُ الْمُفْسِدُونَ وَلَكِنْ لَا يَشْعُرُونَ. Behold, they are the corrupters, but they do not perceive. This could have been understood through knowledge and insight, but they are drowned in emotions, so they cannot comprehend it. Their method of pretending faith. Their way is, وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا. When they meet those who believe, they say, we believe. They come to the community of believers and say, we are with you, we are like you,
we too have believed in the truth. The role of political parties in political disorder. Dear brothers, we need not go far. Look at the condition of the workers inside these political parties. Few ever peek inside to see their reality. Observe their method. For example, a bill is to be presented in the morning. They say, yes, of course. We told you this should be done in the bill. We are with you. But then comes one of the world's tricks, the ballot. A slip is placed in the box so that the truth is hidden. If hands were raised, it would be clear who supported whom. But with a ballot, the reality is concealed. Another trick. During elections, you will see people swearing on the Quran, placing their hands upon it. Yet the Quran describes their behavior. وَإِذَا لَقُوا الَّذِينَ آمَنُوا قَالُوا آمَنَّا وَإِذَا خَلَوْا إِلَى شَيَاطِينِهِمْ. When they meet those who believe, they say, we believe. But when they are alone with their devils, they say, we are with you. The meaning of shaitan. The word shaitan appears later in the story of Adam, where both shaitan and iblis are mentioned. Here, the meaning is clear. They go to their leaders, their shayateen. Shaitan means one who rebels against the laws of God. The root shatana means to overflow, to break the banks like a flood. When boundaries are broken, rebellion arises. That is shaitan. So when they go to their leaders, they say, قَالُوا إِنَّا مَعَكُمْ. We are with you. And when questioned, but we heard you also promised them, they reply, إِنَّمَا نَحْنُ مُسْتَهْزِئُونَ. We were only mocking them. They boast, we were fooling them. You took us seriously? How naive. We were only joking. Qur'an's verdict. Earlier, the Qur'an repeatedly emphasized the one who deceives others is in fact deceiving himself. Here too it says, Allahu yastahzi'u bihim. Allah mocks them. Meaning, according to God's law, they are mocking themselves. They cannot truly mock others. Their deception rebounds upon their own selves. The Qur'anic meaning of God mocks them. Often an objection is raised. They mock and Allah mocks them. So what is the difference? If they mock others and Allah mocks them, how are the two distinct? In idiom, mocking does not mean simply making fun. Its meaning is deeper. Among the Arabs, when a vast desert or wilderness caused travelers to lose their way, they would say, مَفَازَةٌ هَازِيَةٌ بِالرَّكْبِ. A desert that mocks the riders. It means the riders think they are on the right path, but in reality they are lost. In our own tradition, Allama Iqbal, 1877 to 1938, used similar imagery. The crescent of Eid mocks us. What does this mean? Not that the crescent makes fun, but that it brings a message of joy while the nation is in misery. No bread to eat, no clothes to wear, no money for children. The Eid moon announces celebration, but for the poor it is bitter irony. That is the sense of mocking here. Self-deception as true mockery. So when the hypocrites say, we are mocking the believers, making fools of them, the Qur'an declares, in reality, they are mocking themselves. Allahu yastahzi'u bihim. Allah mocks them. Meaning, God's law turns their mockery back upon themselves. They think they are deceiving others, but in truth, they are self-deceived. The desert metaphor. As I explained, the Arabs would say, this desert mocks the riders. Why? Because they are lost, wandering aimlessly, thinking they are on the right path. That is how their mockery rebounds upon them. The Quran continues, وَيَمُدُّهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. And He lets them continue in the rebellion, wandering blindly. This is how God's law mocks them. They are lost, and the further they go along the wrong path, the more astray they become. Choosing the wrong path takes a person further from the destination. It is a strange reality. The more one walks upon the right path, the closer one gets to the destination. But the more one advances upon the wrong path, the further one moves away from the destination. Thus it is said, such a traveler's destination mocks him. The road mocks such a wayfarer. This is the translation and the idiom that has been used. The Quran says, طغيانهم, meaning their rebellion, their persistence in walking the wrong path, like being swept away by a flood. Step by step, their rebellion and misguidance increase. Then comes the word ya'mahun. Its root can be ayn mim ya or ayn mim ha. Although they are sometimes used interchangeably, their basic meanings differ. Ayn mim ya means blindness of the eyes, and ayn mim ha means blindness of insight. The Quran explains, the roads and destinations mock them because they are blind of insight. They walk upon the wrong path thinking it is right and continue upon it. If someone warns them, they mock him. If someone cautions them, they say, you are a fool. We are not fools like you. Every step taken on wrong thinking becomes a cause of mockery. Allahu yastahzi'u bihim. It does not mean that they mock, and God forbid, Allah mocks in the same way. Rather, in their rebellions, their arrogance, and their wrong course, they keep advancing further and further upon the wrong path. This is ya'mahun. They do not use intellect or insight at all, and they keep moving blindly. The Quran explains, the roads mock them, the destinations mock them, reason and insight mock them. They think they are mocking others, but in reality, their blindness prevents them from seeing that the world mocks them. Every rational person mocks them, every traveler on the right path mocks them, and even the roads themselves mock them. What they consider profit is in fact total loss. Warning from history and poetry. O dwellers of the West, God's world is not a marketplace. What you consider pure will now be counterfeit coin. In 1907, a man of vision said, your civilization will commit suicide with its own dagger. The nest built upon a fragile branch will never endure. Again, O dwellers of the West, God's world is not a marketplace. What you consider pure will now be counterfeit coin. Their trade is self-mockery. Tell them, today the things they consider profitable, the gains they rejoice in, while mocking honesty and integrity, calling the trustworthy fools, in reality, their trade itself mocks them. أولئك الذين اشتروا الضلالة بالهدى. They are those who purchase error in exchange for guidance. They are giving away the genuine and taking counterfeit coins. فما ربحت تجارتهم. Their trade will never profit. Those who mock honesty and integrity, saying it is loss, should know their accumulation is worthless. Illustration with currency. In earlier times, people hoarded large sums in 1,000-rupee notes. Afraid to bring out their black money, they kept it hidden. When the currency was devalued and no longer valid, they were left with piles of notes that looked valuable but were worth nothing. Thus arose the proverb, "E hazari note higene," meaning these are 1,000-rupee notes. They appear great but have no value. So too with their trade. It looks abundant, but it is worthless. Quran's verdict. فَمَا رَبِحَتْ تِجَارَتُهُمْ وَمَا كَانُوا مُهْتَدِينَ. Their trade will never profit, and they are not guided. One who insists on walking the wrong path, thinking he will reach the destination, will never arrive. Any nation that does not build its social system on the immutable principles of the Quran will face the same fate. Dear brothers, this is the disease that lies within hearts. The Quran has said, "Fi qulubihim maradun." In their hearts is a disease. And the more they advance upon the wrong path, the more this disease increases. Why? Because they deny the truth of the religion. With their tongues they acknowledge it, but they do not shape their social system according to God's law. Their acknowledgement is only verbal. Thus they think, we are progressing greatly. We are walking upon the right path. The destination is coming closer. But in reality, every step they take moves them further away from the destination. Their trade will never bring profit. They will never reach the destination. Progression in Surah Al-Baqarah. We have now reached verse 16 of Surah Al-Baqarah, dear brothers. After this, the Quran provides further clarification and explanation through examples, describing those who are swept away in the darkness of their emotions, thinking they are on the right path. It says, their example is of such a kind, which we will take up next. رَبَّنَا تَقَبَّلْ مِنَّا إِنَّكَ أَنْتَ السَّمِيعُ الْعَلِيمُ. Our Lord, accept from us. Indeed, you are the all-hearing, the all-knowing. The desert metaphor. As I explained, the Arabs would say, this desert mocks the writers. Why? Because they are lost, wandering aimlessly, thinking they are on the right path. That is how their mockery rebounds upon them. The Quran continues, وَيَمُدُّهُمْ فِي طُغْيَانِهِمْ يَعْمَهُونَ. And he lets them continue in the rebellion,